We want to make Sokuzan's teachings available to all who would benefit from hearing the Dharma from his perspective. You may relate to this if you are returning to these talks time and again and find value in them. Consider supporting us financially and participating with questions during Dharma talks and at book studies. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for attending this Dharma talk. The title of this morning's Dharma talk is Spiritual Health. Spiritual health. I was asked a question about that, and this was suggested as a talk title or something similar to that. And of course, the contrast is just health in general. In general, physical health, how we feel, how our heart is working, how our lungs work, whether we have a cold or don't have a cold or we get over a cold. So many things to consider, so many things to look at and to see that could be addressed. We could eat differently. We could modify things. There's different things we can do relatively for our physical health to take care of ourselves, and we should do that. But only we know, only you know what that is. You may need the help of a professional. You may need the help of a nurse. You may need someone who knows a lot about antibiotics, on and on and on. We could just go on and on. We could spend the whole next hour talking about just about physical health, which I don't know anything about that particularly professionally, but I have certainly had a lot of experience with it, having been around for many years. I thought I was quite astonished years ago, many years ago, when I was vegan, vegetarian, and so on, based on what people told me. And I was really not doing well. It was just terrible for me. And I kept thinking, well, this should work. I'm doing what I'm told, what's suggested by the culture, by the society. Don't hurt animals. That was part of it. Don't kill animals. Eat things that are green. And I did for quite a number of years. And I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And this is maybe not 10 years, but 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. I was already old. I was in my mid 70s. But I was doing what I could based on what I was told, based on what people were saying. And then someone came along. That someone happened to be one of my sons, who does a lot of experimenting around with things. His name is Austin. And he said, and he was eating carnivore. That didn't sound so good to me. Killing animals and eating them didn't sound so good. Lots of cultures are totally against that. And of course, I'm not here to argue about that. Of course they should be. They should do whatever they feel like they should do. It's good not to hurt animals, but it might be good to live as a human for a while. Pardon my throat clearing. Anyway, he said, "Dad, you might want to try this." He'd been carnivore for quite a bit of time. I don't think he is right now. I think he goes all over the place. Of course, he's a lot younger than I am and very healthy. But at the time, I thought, well, I don't have anything to lose but my life, my health. So I just stopped eating everything but meat for about 6 days. And at the end of the 6 days, or around that time, all of my health came back. This is when I'm like in my late 70s. I just felt wonderful. And I don't want to go on and on about my situation. There's lots of other things I could say about it. I don't want to elaborate on that. But it did very, very well. My blood sugar went right down. I wasn't using insulin for many months. Eventually came back because my metabolism still says I'm a diabetic, so, but for about 5 months, I used no insulin, lost 40 pounds. Quite amazing. It's just an amazing proof that what I was doing, relatively speaking, works. It works. I did this and I did this, and my son isn't any expert on anything, at least that, not that. He's an expert in a few other things, like making beer and things like that. What else does he do? I can't list them. All of my children are quite gifted and talented. So my point is, and I'm endeavoring to make here is, if this happens, you can do that. If this shows up, you can stop that. If this shows up, you can encourage it or increase it or include it. But it's very, very relative. And the whole relative situation is in what I point to and have been pointing out to for many years. It was pointed at way before we showed up, or I showed up, is this is an illusion. And if you function in the illusion, you may have to, if you want a nail to go into the wood, you may have to have a hammer. It's very simple relative truth. Everybody knows about this. People even fight against that sometimes. So physical health, and then if we go off into mental health, mental health, what is that? Thinking, evaluating, judging, condemning, accepting, rejecting, and in the Buddhist terms would be passion, aggression, and ignorance, pushing away, pulling, passion, agreeing with something, liking something, going after something, greedy about something. I want it. I gotta have it. I need it. I need that. They shouldn't have it. I need that. Jealousy. That was mine. Now it's, you know what I'm saying. I don't need to elaborate too much. You've all been around for a while. And I would say even further, you might have more experience about this than I do. Psychology from Sigmund Freud, C.G. Jung, Alfred Adler, those are the three back during the turn of the previous century that were mixing it up and going different directions, but all had some kind of really powerful idea about what was happening in the mind. If you just read C.G. Jung, astonishing ability to go down into the nature of thinking and consciousness. Eventually studied a little bit of Eastern philosophy or Buddhism, etc. But a lot of it, what he understood was coming out of his incredibly powerful intellect to understand the nature of what was functioning in the mind. Just his psychological types is well worth the read if you have time. It's not Buddhism. It doesn't have to be. It's just about finding out how things work, how this pushes on that, causes this, causes that. And then if you have suffering or difficulty, what we can do about that. And relatively, you can do a lot. And perhaps you should do that, but only you would know. I could say more about the mental health and so on, but it's so complicated, and I have not studied that a little bit. I've done some reading like you all have, read a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of psychology, a little bit of ideas about mental health, and know a little bit about different therapies. Some of them very, very powerful and helpful. 12-step program is very helpful. It actually can stop someone from proceeding into the addiction of using this or drugs or alcohol to cover up the bad feelings they're having. So it kind of works somewhat, but then the side effects are pretty difficult, as we know. And then some people can actually just use that and they have the good luck or bad luck, if you want to say it that way. It's always like that of it works. They can have a few drinks to cover things up, but they don't overdo that. So it's like it works a little bit like a relative medicine. I had my mother and my stepfather were able to functionally drink just fine, go to work, not get in accidents, and function relatively in a pretty reasonable way. Probably cost them a lot of money for alcohol, but that's what they did. That's how they function. Not a problem with that. But if you go to spiritual health, then that's something I have spent some time looking at because I was not satisfied with the relative structure of the way of addressing what I was dealing with in my own mind stream. So I needed help. I needed help from somebody to help me see deeply into what this was, not just a bunch of tools or devices or cover-ups. So what I've learned, understood, perceived is that spiritual health is about receiving whatever shows up no matter what. I'm not saying that if something shows up on the spiritual path after practicing for 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 years or whatever, that it doesn't get any better. It doesn't improve in the relative way that you expect from some kind of relative approach that this is wrong, fix it. This is wrong, cover it up. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is right. Now it's better. I've changed this, so now it's better. Relative truth works very well that way. And if you were going to live forever, we could just do that because after 300 or 400 years, you'd probably be fairly sane. Might take you a long time. That doesn't seem to happen. So spiritual health seems to be having an intention to see what this is yourself. You see it, not tumble off into some kind of belief system for support, which may have a lot of truth in it and a lot of help in it, but also could function from the point of seeing the true nature of what this is, a way station. It might be a temporary area where you go in circles about cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, and then eventually come back in and right back to the intention, right? In our situation, right back to sitting down, hold still, and observe. Sit down, hold still. Just observe what continues to show up in your mind, in your world, without comment. So to come back to what seemed to be the question, the spiritual health would be no matter what happens, it will not dissuade you from seeing the truth. You are not buying into anybody's opinion, anybody's judgment, anybody's analysis. This doesn't mean you wouldn't talk to your doctor, just like this doesn't mean you wouldn't talk to your Dharma teacher or your meditation teacher or your mentor or your guru, whatever word you're using, your Roshi or your Lama. Doesn't mean you wouldn't listen to that person and consider it. But if that person is a true teacher, if they're not just teaching out of the positionality of ego, of right and wrong, highly elevated form of ego that thinks they've somehow accomplished something in the spiritual path, you cannot accomplish anything in the spiritual path. The spiritual path is full of accomplishments up to the time where you see that's all an illusion, that's unreal. And there's just this. It has no past, it has no future, it has no present. This is an illusion. You're looking at it right now. You're looking at it this moment. You are already completely awake. But you're just covered up by your dreams. Don't dream. And how do you do that? You see how much your life is about dreaming about things, inventing things, making things, chasing things, following things, pushing away from things. People will spend so much time looking at others and judging them and evaluating them and get their relative freedom or their relative safety or their relative sanity. Relative sanity it works. It works. Worked very well for my mother. Worked very well. But nothing lasts. People pass away. They do not live. I could say a lot more about spiritual health, but to do that, when I talk about it, it sounds like some kind of a standard. I don't mean that. For what that is for you or for someone else, there's might be quite a bit of difference. As someone who is just to comment a little bit on the theistic approach as to non-theistic, just a categorization. Doesn't mean that there is such a thing as this or that, theistic, non-theistic. But if there's a strong ideal to live up to or something to, as we say, the word we use is worship, like there is in the theistic religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and other forms that we could speak about also, where there's a lot of intense relative kind of devotion to something higher, a higher self. Even this 12-step program uses a higher self. It does a pretty good job at not clamping down on a particular higher self. So there's some room in there to have your own spiritual path without being criticized or condemned or made to feel wrong. So even the spiritual path of in Christianity, if there's a strong devotion to what one perceives through the help of the Gospels, if you read some of the translations out of the Gospels, out of the Bible, which were in the original Aramaic, pretty powerful teachings. What an amazing human being that lived at that time, and what a crazy, confused society he showed up in. Well, look what they did to him. And then instead of understanding what that was that they did, it was the craziness, the ignorance of the people that couldn't understand that teacher. And rather than elevating that kind of thing into some kind of martyr situation, not a good idea. Just not a good idea. It does not serve those teachings very well. How do I know? I don't know. Just doesn't look like it. Martyr, that's not particularly useful. That perpetuates the feeling of right and wrong, ego, of victim and perpetrator. Not a good idea. It's not that it doesn't show up relatively, but it's an illusion. Imagine how it would feel to be a perpetrator, that you couldn't help it. You had to do this thing. You had no choice. It looks like ego will say, well, you have a choice. You're going to do this. It will find it, because ego cannot stand to be wrong or to be incorrect or be functioning without some kind of an agenda or proof. Ego is very powerful at absconding with any shred of evidence that might get it some kind of protection so that you don't see your true nature as you're not separate from anything. There is no ego. There's no being anywhere. This is very, very dangerous to the one who's on the spiritual path, mundane path, or any kind of path where who they are is threatened in terms of their fundamental identity, ego. It's unreal. I could say a lot more about all of this, but perhaps I could take some questions. Yes, sir.
About spiritual health, is that based on our intention spiritually?
So when we use those words, spiritual, which is conceptual, has an idea, points to something, we may agree on it, we may not. And health means something where it's functional. Spiritual health will be that your physical health is good enough you can even get to a place where you can sit down and work on that dynamic. The culture you're in, the context, may not even allow that. Excuse me, you might be in an area where the political situation, the craziness of the society is so insane, operating out of warfare, that there is no time to sit down and try to understand your true nature. You're too busy trying to keep from getting bombed, or too busy trying to find food, etc. So in our situation, it's find time to sit down and intend to see what this is. And in our situation, our cultural situation for 2,500 years, we have had the teachings of the Buddha, the awakened one, the Tathagata. So we use that. It doesn't mean we believe in it. We use the structure, just like we chanted the sutras. All of you are here today. Most of you were not here for the sutras. It's a very, very important part of this path. If you consider yourself a student of the Buddha's Dharma, you might want to attend one of these once every 3 or 4 months. We're not doing this to show off or to be fancy. This is a very, very powerful way of working with the mind, which brings up a form in the mind and an expression where you're actually chanting or saying something over and over and over and over again. people avoid this. Why do they avoid it? Ego. Ego does not want to have any controls over it at all unless it decides that this is helpful, that I will be the one who knows the mantras by heart and can recite things and can follow the form exactly so that when people look at me, I'm a really good practitioner. This is just incorrect. From the point of view of the spiritual health, it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. But you don't have to do that. You can sit down. I can tell you how to do it. You need no equipment. You don't need a cross. You don't need one of these things. You don't need a Buddha. You don't need anything. But you may need something, because it's very hard to do this by sitting down in your hallway with no one there but your Cocker Spaniel sitting next to you. And just watch the nature of the mind, because there's so many distractions that make you maybe relatively healthy, but the spiritual path may not be for you. If it is for you, then you are going to have to find a way to go within, which is only a direction that has to do with ground, path, and fruition. Ground is suffering or difficulty, and the path is go within. And the fruition to that is, there are no words for it. If there were, I would be speaking them. But everything I say is a lie, because it falls short of what this actually is. I'm looking at it and I can't say it. Some people see this and can't say it, and they become poets because they see it, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't even realize that there could be a spiritual path there. Some people try to make art or poetry or literature or painting into a spiritual path, and it probably is for them, but they might not be able to teach it to anyone. Just teaching someone how to paint doesn't guarantee a spiritual path. Make it a good one.
Yoga bowing. Is spiritual health inhibited by poor physical or mental health?
Very much so, thank you. Anything can come with physical health, mental health, where this is just a structure, a biological structure, and there's no guarantee this is gonna. That's why we talk about free and well favored. The first of the four reminders, isn't it? Doesn't go like something like, thank God that I'm healthy, or that's a different one, I guess. First, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well favored. Difficult to gain. Difficult. You can't gain this. You have no choice here. You didn't do this. You didn't show up in front of the mirror being blonde Norwegian. Or you didn't show up in being in Somalia having a beautiful black skin. It's not your choice to do that. You think it is, you're dumb. You just don't know. You just you would rather have ignorance as a language and understanding than have actual the truth, because the truth doesn't have any shape. It is shapeless, it's formless. But coming back to your question, yes, all kinds of obstructions are there. Just the greediness the ego can have can stop you from seeing it. You can be very, very greedy and materialistic and grasping and intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. You can do any of that, and it will obstruct seeing the true nature of what this is, of what everything is. What not only this, but but this, meaning this, any this. It's empty of all the otherness that we see there. But if some of that otherness is filled up with intensity, like heart disease, or like imbalance chemically in your mind, so you can't actually just hold still and just see clearly what this is. You can't even practice meditation, let alone prayer. You can't. It's too confusing. Did I get close to what you're looking for?
Yoga bowing, is the grasping unhealthy on the spiritual path?
No, it's not unhealthy. What is that? Unhealthy is to grasp and justify it and validate it, or grasp and not be aware of it, or grasp and go to war with it. And what is healthy? Just be aware of the grasping. You do not have to change it. When I say you do not have to, you shouldn't change it. If I'm functioning as your teacher, you're sitting in front of me and you say, I can't stop grasping. I'll say, so? I can't either. It's not about accomplishing anything. I've been harping on this for a long time. People misunderstand and think there's a right and a wrong, and they'll actually use anything they can to clamp down so they don't have to look at what's here. Because this is covered up by an intense shield, like armor. The ego, armor of ego is just intense with ideas, opinions, judgments, consolidations, conflict, conflations, contaminations, and
Conflagrations.
conflagrations. Thank you. Them too. Those guys. It's just, and you don't have to stop them. This is just amazing. This is such wonderful information if you can get it. Because the next time you find yourself sulking, suffering, sad, miserable, and coming up with stories of why you're doing that, this is an opportunity to see that there is no cause. That which is arising as suffering, as the first noble truth, is without cause. If you think it's cause, then you'll continue to perpetuate that circularity in your mind. And I would say, well, good luck. Do that. Go do this, go do that. Run away, run upstairs, run downstairs, go in the basement, hide out, go down the street, talk to your friends, form a group where you all talk to each other about what this is. More? Yes.
Contra psychologically, spiritual health would be having a purpose or having meaning in life. What is different from that definition to what you're pointing at?
There are differences, but the main understanding there is what is meaning? I mean, I could say I don't mean to get into philosophy or existentialism or even particle physics. I'm saying the whole idea is something we think up about something. It's more separation. It's a very subtle form of separation that is validated everywhere. Very, very rare will you hear anyone say, like I'm about to say, there's no such thing. It's an invention. This is powerful understanding. There isn't anything else. You're always looking at, you're just looking at your own hand, your own flesh and blood is everywhere. Everyone has been your mother. Everyone is your mother. You are everyone's mother. There is no separation. That doesn't mean you suddenly start controlling the world, telling everyone what to do. You appreciate the various aspects that show up in the separation, in the illusion that you know fundamentally are completely perfect. There's nothing to mix, nothing to unmix, nothing to do. More about that if you have it.
Can we choose our own spiritual path?
You as a person, there's some mix of the ego in there trying to get something. So there's something, the ego is not separate from Buddha nature. It's when you're aware of that structure, then you don't care how you feel because there is no you. And you know that anything that shows up, no matter how negative the feeling, no matter how much Ed across the room has said something you has caused that, you know that it's unreal. And what is unreal is your reaction to that person who appeared to cause something, you know that's unreal too. So you don't separate anything else. No more division, ignorance, no more division, ignorance, no more adding or multiplying, no more math. That doesn't mean you can't add things up or calculate a little bit if you need to do this, and you need to function in the illusion to have good health, function as in the illusion to accomplish this or make a living, support your family, pay your bills. That's all very, very ordinary, flat out ordinary. But your ultimate understanding is nothing ever occurs. That you dance. It's like you're on stage. You dance in the illusion if you're called to dance, and you die if you're called to die. When I say call, no one's calling you. I'm just using illusory words to describe something that cannot be described. More.
Can you choose the wrong teacher?
There's no such thing as choice. Anything that occurs, I can use the example of this loudmouth over here. I have a dozen people that seem to think what I have to say might be important. If everybody disappears, I'm probably not going to talk to the wall. I just don't say anything. I don't really need you. You don't need me. Fundamentally, FFF, fundamentally, you don't need anything. But if you think you do, this might be a good direction to go. And what is that direction? Come find your floor in your house, sit down on it, and look at something that's not moving and see what continues to move and ramp up. And that's the part of the confusion that needs to be seen first, because you won't be able to see this confusion here. It's too convincing because you're one of them. You're a people and you're there and you have an elbow and you have teeth. See these? Well, I don't have very many, but I have a couple. It is so convincing, isn't it? And we have heartburn and I shouldn't eat potatoes. It's just we have this constant comment, little tiny stories about everything. You don't have to stop them. You just have to watch them. But the only way that I know that you can watch them is to sit down, sit symmetrical, create symmetry with the body, which is part of the illusion, so that the asymmetry of the mind can start to show up and you can see the differentiation and desire that happens in that mind and do nothing with it. Be very generous to your mind stream. Receive, receive, receive. It's such a gift. Giver and receiver are not two different things, but you have to be the receiver, not the giver. You go out and give, give, give. This is ego in most cases. Got to start somewhere. You might as well start there. Give. But eventually you need to give everything your attention and receive the incredible gift of this illusion that is saying to you, nothing is separate. There are not two things anywhere. All the suffering and all the difficulty that arises in your mind is just supposed to be there. There's nothing to fix. More?
Conjure bowing. On the spiritual path, can we build like a super ego instead of?
If you're on the spiritual path and you build on accomplishments of being, getting further and getting, if you take the 12 grounds of the Bodhisattva bhumis, and you look at that, they look like something's happening, you're getting better and improving, but you won't find the first one is which is joy, and the last one is cloud of Dharma Mega. Those are not two separate things, nor are they the same. They happen all at the same time. So there's nowhere to get. There's no journey happening. There's a journey that starts, but there's no result. Nothing comes out as, finally I'm awake. Finally I'm not separate from the Buddha. Finally I understand what the Buddha was saying. That will not show up. If that shows up, you might as well look around you, because you're on the side of a mountain and there's still more to accomplish in the sense of seeing, but not more to accomplish in the sense of results. That was kind of weak, wasn't it? It's weak because I always see how I can't say this. How do I say this? How do I talk about this? This is just the physical part. I'm using my hands and moving around. How would I talk about this? It's because it's so convincing. But this is an illusion. And everything that arises in your mind, everything you're hearing coming out of this person sitting here is just it's unreal. It's realistic because you hear it. It's sound, smell, taste, touch, body, mind, memory. What I said last week. Quite often I have students say, well, the other day you said that, and anytime someone says that, I guess I think, I don't know if I think or not, I think, how do I address that? Should I say, so they say, oh, Sokuzan, so the other day you were saying the fundamental nature of blah, 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 like this, and I listened to it. And what's coming up in my mind is not what I said, but there's no such thing as that. The person is sitting right here and lying to me, telling me that there was another day. But can I say, you're lying? I can't say that to them because they believe that. So what I have to do as a teacher, I have to meet you where you're at, in the illusion that you're a body, in the illusion that you're a woman, in the illusion that you're a man, in the illusion that there's a right and a wrong. And in order to protect that stupid ego, you will hurt other people and justify it in your mind and have little stories about why, well, she said they said, I'm going to do this and do that. And in the meantime, people are dying everywhere. But no, your story about what she said or what he said or what they did is more important than people 50 feet away from you who are being murdered, or 5,000 miles. And should they be important? Yes, but they have to be important here because what is happening out there is a landslide. You step into that and you're just going to be mulch. You can't stand in the way. You might feel like your ego will do that. Stand and look like a hero, the one who's protesting. Am I against protesting? No, I intend to do some of that myself here in a few days. So you don't have to avoid the illusion. You just have to realize it is one. And if you realize it is one, you might run for president.
Heaven forbid. My God.
We're going to have to turn off a microphone since somebody has theirs turned on because they're telling someone else. They're interpreting what I'm saying.
Kind of a bowing. Can the spiritual path make someone mentally ill?
There isn't anything that won't make you mentally ill. The cause and effect is so believable. I have to say that no, because to use a word like you're saying, can it make? And then I have to use a word like no, and then I use another word which is relative and conditional because nothing is separate from anything else. If someone is practicing on the spiritual path and they have a lot of difficulty and they start to function in that way where they need some kind of treatment, then they probably do. But there's no causation. You can't find a causation. But science and human beings and politics of experience in general want cause and effect because it makes us feel like we have control of something. It's an illusion. You have no say so about anything. That doesn't mean you can't have a headache and take meds for it. Just like I take all kinds of meds for diabetes and heart disease. I wouldn't be here with this illusion wouldn't be continuing. You'd be up here teaching this class, not me. More?
Kind of a bowing. Does the spiritual path attract people who are mentally ill?
You being a counselor and you being a therapist and with all of your training, I can see why you might ask that question. And I would say there's a little possibility of that, but it's not a problem. I mean, it could be problematic in some specific situations. So I would take away and say that's never the case. Maybe a little bit, but the main thing is nothing comes to an end because nothing starts. And so therefore we get trapped by cause and effect. And we think if you can just stop doing that, then that won't happen. You quite often hear politicians say, we have to do something so this never happens again. It's just a statement of the self-centeredness that happens in the consciousness showing up as a particular person. May have very good, wonderful intentions to save all beings and help people and serve people. So coming back to your question again, somewhat, but it's such a somewhat that it's not worth necessarily going into and trying to, well, let's change that part so that that won't ever happen again. You do not have a say-so. People want control and they might get some control, but it's relative. You might as well grab onto a cloud. It's an illusion. More if you have it. Anyone else in here? Yes.
Shui Wu bowing. Is spiritual health just part of the illusion?
You can't find anything that shows up that isn't. It's just another concept. But the idea, the way I describe it, it's like when you're in the illusion, you don't know it. It seems like you're a meditator. It seems like you're a good meditator. And then you're not such a good meditator. Meditation is really easy. Well, no, it's not so easy. So we keep looking for strategy around that to find out, will this work? Or maybe I should return to Roman Catholicism. Or maybe ego always wants results. And if it doesn't get them, it starts to get suspicious because ego is totally convinced. That part of consciousness is totally convinced that we're somebody, that we're a person who can be hurt, who can be offended, who can be successful, who can be a failure. Whom. Not that one. You're way ahead of me, aren't you? So put that down a little bit. You're such a good editor. Edit that question and give me that question. I'll give you as clear and simple and direct an answer as I can.
Is spiritual health an illusion?
Yes.
Shui Wu bowing. Are there relative benefits to having spiritual health?
Yes.
Shui Wu bowing, and what would those be?
How many you want?
All of them.
We don't have time for that. I'll give you one. I'm gonna have to repeat what my teacher says. You won't be such a nuisance. It's a pretty good one. You'll be that meaning spiritual health. You actually realize that people need to do what they need. This doesn't mean that you don't stop somebody who's hurting someone else if it looks like you could do that, or if you're, especially if you're invited, if somebody's calling for your help, you would function in the illusion just like everybody else is doing in the illusion, which might be run away because you don't want to be involved. None of my business. I don't care if they're murdering them, but that's none of my business. I need to stay out of there. And the other person is, I can't let that happen. I'm going over the fence into the backyard. You can't treat your child that way. You can't treat your wife, husband, or dog that way. You can't do that. That's you need to function in the illusion as if it's real, but at the same time, you know this is real. But those are in the illusion that you're working with. You can see they're totally convinced that what they're doing is real. This gives you a little bit of a space in there where you probably won't overdo the situation and be what? A nuisance. Interfering with something where you get in there and you find out we're just acting. I was not hitting her. We're just playing. We're playing out a play. We're going to have a play. So you can take something so seriously because of your own projections, you don't really see the spaciousness of it.
Shui Wu bowing. Relatively, can we know if we have spiritual health?
You can know it relatively. You can especially know it if you have some kind of understanding that you're going to have to do this no matter what. You can't use relative things coming up. Well, this isn't working, or that's happening, or he said, she said, or any of those. Just like the teacher, if you're judging your teacher, you might want to judge the teacher and evaluate the teacher before you hook up with him or her or them. First, take a look at what's happening. Be careful of rumors because those are people's opinions based on fear and on ego and on judgment and on standards. Different cultures are full of standards, some more than others. Some have standards that are so intense that it's a huge trap. So coming back to what you seem to be asking about, I think you can. More about that if you have it. It's a good area to question in.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Combining several questions on YouTube
Good.
and a couple monks from Kathmandu, bowing in, Norbu, and Yunyo.
I know those. I know those women.
Ath in the UK asks, is spiritual health nothing but decluttering the mind from all the pointless thoughts that overlook non-separateness? Thank you.
That could be a way of talking about it in a relative way, so it would make some sense to people. But if you see this, you see it's not real. You only make it into a teaching if you find people that are trapped by the clutter. But if you see that it never was any clutter, that's why it's so amazing. That's why there's no credential. Buddha Dharma, awakened truth with no credential, no proof. There's no evidence. Someone says, "How do you know what gives you the right to even say such a thing?" I don't. You give me the right. You listen, I'll say something. You ask a question, I'll say something. If you don't say something, if you don't show up, as I've said, kind of jokingly, but if everybody just disappears, I'm not going to keep coming to this monastery. I'm only here because of this part of consciousness that shows up as a student, for this part of consciousness that seems to be able to understand something that is in through this body mind and be able to say something about it that might serve to help you or anyone come to stop going to war with everything. That doesn't mean agree. That's the other thing. Don't agree, don't disagree. Because if you don't grasp, you don't reject, and you don't ignore, there isn't anything left. There's just consciousness. I don't care how much the illusion shifts around, but it's not an accomplishment. It's not someplace where you arrive. It's not a state of mind. It is mind. But it's not even that. That's another word. It's not even that. You cannot find a word for this. even though the path leading to that understanding, discovery, or insight or perception is filled with all kinds of structures and things that get us there. And the Theravadins have all kinds of structures. The Taoism has all kinds of structures. Christianity, Judaism, Islam has lots of structures. And those are important. They should all have those. Everyone, there are people in the past who have some kind of insight into what this is and have endeavored to find a way to help others possibly to see this. It's very, very complicated. But if you see it, it's not complicated at all.
Yoka bowing. A question from JB in Pennsylvania. In a group of 3 people functioning out of delusion, can realizing the delusion they have accepted as their cultural norm create a mental illness as they become grounded in reality?
Wow. Which chapter of that book that you are writing is that? I can tell it's a serious question. I would say, in response to it, I would say, yeah, it's possible. But it's quite a labyrinth of concepts there, which seem to be, from what I hear you say, what is this person's name?
JB.
So JB. So what you're saying there, I can tell you've contemplated this and thought about it and imagined situations, and then you seem to be asking about it. And I would say only you are going to know that. For any response I would give you, I can give you a response that will be helpful to you, but it may not address your question. Find out who you are, because what is being covered up by that speculation is an assumed identity. I'm pointing this way because I can't point to your heart. There's an assumed identity that when I hear you ask a question, anyone asks a question, I can see what your cover up is, that is wordless. And all I do is watch it and know that if you continue to come this way, not to this old man, but just to come this way by going within. Go within. It's not two. The wall and your heart are not two different things. You need to look at the wall so you can go within. And then you see what this is. That question will not have an answer. The question and the answer will fall together. It's interesting when someone asks a question, I don't have anybody else to look at, so I just look at Mioka as if he asked the question. I could just as easily look at young guy. Couldn't I? Anything else in here before I go to the screen? Is there anyone on Zoom that has a question, especially in this area we've been talking about of spiritual health? Mahesh.
Mahesh bowing. What are the signs of someone who is spiritually unhealthy? Bowing.
Well, you have to understand, I was asked this as a question. It's not something I might think up, but someone's asked, and I try to meet people where they're at in their understanding or their lack of understanding or their desire for understanding. So I'm responding to someone's question about it. So I don't really consider myself, or not consider, but I don't concern myself with someone's, I wouldn't use that healthy or unhealthy. I don't use categories or standards about anything, because if you do that, it may be helpful to some extent. Just like with this person's question, I think it's very helpful for me to respond and talk about it, so that it doesn't have any structure to it. A person who, my understanding based on the question, my response to the question is someone who is healthy if they just are, their determination, their intention is to see the truth no matter what, no matter how they feel. They don't use anything that shows up, like we would in a relative situation. If you are trying to build a house, you've got a whole bunch of things that have to live up to certain standards. Whereas on the spiritual path, the standards are used, but as we use the standards, save all beings, be with all things, the 16 precepts we have in the Soto tradition. Those are to be observed, not obeyed. And then when you observe them, you listen to them. Well, it might be good not to kill anybody. It might be good to speak the truth, but also you eventually, by doing that as an observation, you notice how much you've been lying all your life. And here, when you entered this, say, well, I can do that. I don't tell lies. I was talking to a gentleman in a prison once, many years ago, who was an inmate, taught some classes in prisons. And I said something about, you can't all but lie. And he was offended. I never lie, he said. I said, yes, you do. You do all the time. I said, it may take you a while to see that, but don't give up on it. You can see it. It's not something that I'm accusing you of, because I'm saying at the same time with this gentleman, at the same time, I lie too, but I know I'm lying. I know you cannot, it's relative truth that arises out of this body-mind complex and seems to have hands and arms. Coming back to your question, if I've missed something or if I've wandered off down the hillside somewhere, you can reframe your question and I will endeavor to come back and be more specific.
Mahesh Bhawin. Yeah, I think like in Theravadan structures, as you mentioned, right? There is clear things like if you're not practicing enough, if you're not keeping up the precepts, then maybe we can call it spiritually unhealthy. In what you said, as long as someone is receiving, that is spiritual health. So I was wondering, how can we be spiritually unhealthy? In what do you say, Bhawin?
Okay, I'll go for what you're asking me. And then I have great respect for the Theravadan tradition. We would not be here if it weren't for the Theravadins. Coming out of the 18 schools that came out of Buddhism when he passed into his parinirvana, without all those schools to create lots of lattice work to help us get to the point of even having such a thing as Zen, or even having such a thing as Tantric Buddhism, or having such a thing as that, it would have died out more than likely, but it did not. So I have great respect. There are people who need to practice in that way. There are people who need to be Christian, people who need to be atheists. And when I say need to be, I'm saying it's dependently risen. There's nobody there. It's an illusion. It's like you're born and you're born on the edge of a cliff, and the first 10 seconds of your birth is falling. You're falling, and then when you hit, if you hit, but when you hit, then the body dies. But who you are doesn't hit. It keeps right on going forever. There's no direction. Eventually, you see it isn't even falling. So coming back to your question again, I would say, to put it bluntly, when you're intending to see the truth as an intention, and you're unaware that you have a conceptual idea of intention rather than a complete emptiness and lack of anything showing up. If something shows up, then just receive it. Eventually, nothing shows up. So it would be so along the lines of going back to the Theravadan example. If you don't follow the precepts and if you don't practice, then this is not so good. And the way I teach this, we have precepts, we have practices, and if you don't show up, then it's a relative situation. So if you don't show up, then we have a little saying here, a slogan here. It says CCC: communicate, cooperate, collaborate. It's just saying if you're stuck on the roof, if you're up there putting in bird feeders or something on top of the roof, and whoops, and you've lost track of the time, and you can't get down to the monastery in time for the class, you say, whoops, and you communicate. You let me or other people in the community or in your family know that you're tied up here. So it's communication is so important. It's not about being right. And so same thing with precepts, same thing with that. When a precept isn't followed or isn't observed, or is you're doing something that's like the opposite of that, be aware of that. Just be aware. And if you're aware, then you'll take care of yourself and you'll take care of others. Nothing to live up to. Pride is so sneaky. It's so sneaky for us to think that we're so generous and helpful when actually we're really, really greedy right here. I know I'm greedy. You may not know that you are. I know it, but if there's no one who knows that, it's just consciousness. Be very gentle with everyone and with yourself. Be kind to others. As His Holiness Dalai Lama said, be kind. It's hard because you may be times when you're not kind, when you're pushy, but be kind to the one who is doing that rather than go around and blame them for how you're acting or blame yourself for how you're acting. Those are both very confusing. Don't do anything with it. It's ultimately true that nothing actually occurs. This is an illusion. If you think otherwise, you'll not only suffer yourself, but you'll create suffering or you'll trigger suffering in others when actually, if you're triggering suffering in others, then you're either lost in the confusion or you're a Dharma teacher. And there's no way to tell the difference. If you think there is, go ahead. Go ahead. If anything changes, that's an illusion. When you see nothing happens, nothing changes, this is the truth. Jen, do you have a question?
Jen, excuse me, Jen Bowing. I seem to be a person who needs relatively therapy. It seems to have been a stabilizing force that maybe it feels like allows me to sit on the cushion because I've grounded an experience in a series of cause and effect, this sort of schema.
Yes.
That you say is if the second you find a cause, you're just perpetuating the circularity
Yes.
of suffering and all of this. I guess my question is there a way to guard against? I want to make sure I'm not using I don't want psychotherapy to impede on my spiritual practice.
It can't impede it.
Okay.
You can't. Therapy, I sometimes even encourage people to get a therapist or talk to somebody who works with the mind stream in a relative way and works with those structures. I think it's very valid. Some people may need to do just that and not bother with meditation practice or some kind of a whoop-de-doo called the spiritual path. It's up to them, each person, and some people do both. And as some of you know, Kandrima is a therapist and works with clients every day and understands the difference between working with someone who's working with it. She doesn't necessarily promote meditation to anyone, do you? I mean, if they ask about it, she might offer some information, but not much. Has a good understanding of what the spiritual path is and what the mundane path is as far as therapy. One is not better than the other. It's just not better. I don't know how else to say it. I'm not trying to get people to meditate. I don't know how else to say it other than that. But what you're doing is completely perfect. Just continue that way. And don't be too concerned about how you feel. Don't be too concerned about your judgments. Let the judgments come up or let the concern come up. When I say don't be concerned, I'm not saying stop the worrying, but when you have the worries and everything, don't add on to another worry on top of the worry that is worried about your worrying.
Okay.
Okay.
Sage advice. Can I ask another question?
Yes, please, please.
When we sit down and hold still, earlier you said, I believe you said, and sorry about lying about previous moments, don't even exist. You said like if we're not sitting down holding still, then we're peopling. We're out there, part of the circularity. So is sitting down and holding still a way of separating ourselves from the circularity? Period. Question mark. Bowing. That's what I meant.
Okay. So yes, it is. It's a way of separating. Like we talk about with COVID, we socially isolate. And of course, Buddhist meditators down through the centuries have been socially isolating by going to mountains, going into retreats, and getting away from society and from the culture and from the family so they can just train your mind, and that training can show up in all kinds of different ways. So I wouldn't be, it's not a concern, particularly to whether you're peopling or whether you're sitting still. It's the idea is to do something, even if it's only a few minutes in your life where you're not doing anything but watching or anything but just receiving whatever's coming up. And then when you go out into your everyday, sometimes called post meditation, your everyday life, then there's a possibility you might be doing some receiving there. No guarantee of it. More, please.
Dim bowing. I think more specifically, I mean, I have often that sense that you've mentioned, I think, and lots of people have mentioned, of moving into the audience rather than being on stage
Yes.
while meditating. And that itself feels like a separation, which feels, at least linguistically, in contrast with not separate, not separate. I guess I'm trying to.
So one of them is the path, and the other one is a relative way of talking about the result or the conclusion or the true nature of things. Yeah. So the path quality is to get off the stage, or at least see yourself backing up a quarter of an inch, or maybe off the stage, and just observe. You're doing that when you sit down and face the wall. Not much is happening there, at least for a while, and then maybe a lot is happening, which means basically nothing is happening. And so then you would practice in that way, and you would, as a path quality of trying to see what this is fundamentally, what it is beyond the craziness and beyond the illusion and beyond the grasping, passion, aggression, and ignorance. So it seems like totally appropriate. You're describing it, and I don't see any problem with any of it. It just sounds totally appropriate. You might get off the stage. You might back up a quarter of an inch. You might be so aware that you can't do that. That's also aware. Anything is awareness. It's just awareness. It's just whatever shows up, you receive. Awareness doesn't produce anything. We produce this. I move this. We say this. I'm saying all kinds of words. And right in the midst of my words, I'm having little, what you might call secondary thoughts. I don't know if there's any primary ones, but the secondary thoughts come up as to this personhood that's here, that's still here, ego's still here, that you don't know what you're talking about. Commonly, that's called self-consciousness, or it's also called paranoia. What's another word for that? You think of any other words?
Second guessing.
Second guessing. Well, you got to have a first guess before you can have a second guess. Not to take exception to what you said. So I would say, is there something further, something really, really tight and specific about that I could respond to? Otherwise, I just tend to elaborate on all kinds of stuff.
Dim bowing. You're doing great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, no, what's coming up for me, if you want to know, it's more of a comment, is I'm noticing both of my questions and lots of things in my life point to me overcomplicating matters and worrying where there's no necessary.
Yeah, we tend to do that. And again, for the thousandth time to everybody, it's not about fixing it. Just if you're just aware, amazing, reflect on it. If you're just aware that you're complicating things, that's enough. Do not have to fix that. But the ego mind wants to fix, adjust, correct. The ego is afraid of being not existing. It's afraid of non-existence. That is tied in with the body being afraid of death. Nothing happens. There's nothing is threatened. Even the body is not threatened. It's just part of dependent origination. It shows up, it lives for a while and dies. But you don't die. Who you are is just consciousness and not a separate being. It's the best kind of community you could ever find, not separate from anything, anywhere. Complete, not agreement. Better than that. From ego's point of view, it's worse than that, because it means there's no personhood that gets to be right or wrong or left out.
Kabali, question from YouTube from, I'm guessing it's Guy, it's part of his handle. How to maintain awareness?
So must be new here. Don't maintain anything. Don't maintain anything. Just be aware of that which wants to maintain things, like the one who just asked the question, and what shows up as lack of maintenance or the presence of maintenance or the off and on quality of maintenance. Don't maintain anything. Just be aware. Awareness it's total freedom. If you don't want a result, and then any result that you get is just consciousness. It's not a thing. These are not items. These are not this. It's just within the relative truth. It's just confusing and convincing. And if you see what it is, it's the other C word, consciousness only. This is just consciousness. It's not a sound. It's not a thing. This is not a thing. And this part of the illusion is chuckling, and the illusion is chuckling. Everything is laughing. You don't have to maintain. You just have to be aware. And how do you do that? Through the sense fields. Every one of the sense fields, including the mind, is made biologically, chemically to receive. Don't produce anything unless you're asked a question, unless you're asked for help. Save all beings, put others before yourself. You will not get credit for it. You will not get a credential. The way you personally in your life walking the streets of Brooklyn or through your living room, you may do something that is completely without choice. Maybe for the first time, maybe you'll see that you've always been without choice. You'll do that and you might get criticism from someone, but you'll know what it is. You'll know it's not about acceptance, rejection, or ignorance. You'll know that you're functioning in the illusion and you just completely sparkle everywhere. No one sees it. No credit. You don't get to be a great sage.
Kabbaling, another question from Ath in the UK.
Yes.
Expecting and responding to emails and text messages seems so detrimental to spiritual health, even neutral ones. Why is that? Their intrusive illusion seems so real. Any solution?
Yes, there is a great solution to that. Don't do it. See, how's that feel? Oh, I can't stop it. Well, then that's the awareness that you do it and you put tension there that you don't want to do that. That's true discipline, not accomplishing, living up to some kind of stupid form that people next to you and people down there with chevrons on their sleeves say, yep, that's right. You got it right there, Corporal. This is not a military situation. If you've been in a military situation, that's what it is. Control, mainly of old white people, men. Not always. It's been other things through other cultures, but ours happens to be that one. So just be aware of it. Put some tension on it. Try to stop doing that, but don't put so much that it's about success. Put a little bit there, and you'll notice it'll back off a little bit, but it'll move back and forth. And you'll notice that almost the phase of the moon will tell you how much you're going to do that. I'm not kidding you. Nor am I making a suggestion you should study astrology. Might want to start with numerology. It's a lot simpler. No, don't even study that. Let's see. What do you do for a living? What do you have for lunch? See, I'm just asking about relative things. There's no way you can ferret out the right thing to say, to do, to have. When you meet somebody that first time you've ever met them, they walk up and you meet them wherever, in your workplace or in your wherever, in the monastery, and you notice that their whole dynamic is just coming from who knows where. Getting to know somebody is kind of interesting because they're presenting a personality that's based on just countless aspects, countless experiences of relative truth showing up in the first relative presence is a body showing up out of where? Two other bodies getting together? Where does that all come from? Where does this amazing intelligence come from? And find the source. There is no source. So we notice how some people present as being very disciplined and control, and they take credit for it. Someone else is, like you just was just said there about all these emails and all this wasted time, and it's just, that's awareness. You don't have to fix anything. Spend some time, just simple instruction, Sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, have all the senses open and attitude to just receive whatever shows up. Just smell, taste, touch, hear, think, feel, whatever shows up. Falling asleep. I don't care what it. Maintain nothing. Don't even stay there. If you maintain for a few minutes anyway, and then see what happens. Maybe you'll get up. Maybe you'll go to the restroom. Maybe you'll take a walk. Maybe you'll never meditate again. Don't maintain. Exciting, huh? Wouldn't it be good to not have anything to do? Be available to everything. I don't know if I can close without a question from Jisheen. Or maybe Deb.
Deb Bowing.
Deb, go ahead.
So I've been sort of clamping down on the concepts of illusion and truth and trying to parse out a question out of that. Seeing illusion and truth as some kind of opposite or duality. Is truth, as you're speaking about it, just awareness of the illusion that I'm living in? That there's no real like truth. The truth is just the illusion. Am I in the right place with that, or is that not what you're speaking of?
If you understand that there's no right place, then yes. So it's the illusion is the way the truth shows up. And that's why you can actually watch what is showing up and not accept it, not reject it, and not ignore it. And then you see that it's not the same thing, but it's like the illusion is watching the illusion. It's the illusion is watching herself. Every piece of furniture, you're not separate from. Your windows in the front of your house, not separate. But you don't have to believe it or conclude it. It's not like something that you can do. Just receive. Results are just like doors closing. Don't close any door. Don't conclude. Don't exclude. Just observe. Thank you so much.